Welcome back, Nerglings. Today we are returning to Warhammer Fantasy Battle, this time with a focus on the Bestiary. But before we start, be sure to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss an update. If you fancy switching on notifications too, that would be spiffing. The Bestiary. The Warhammer world is home to several intelligent races, a few not so intelligent races, and a great many fearsome creatures. Bestiary describes these different races and creatures, including supernatural beings such as demons, elementals, and the undead. The Bestiary lists the various creatures that appear in the Warhammer game, each being represented by a general description with notes on behaviour, disposition, and where they may be found. In addition, each creature has a typical profile, standard competition points value, and any other information that may require to play them in your games. The accompanying Warhammer Armies book sets out the armies which are suitable for competition games. It lists the types of troops available to each army, along with the number of character and other special models. A note on Ravening Hordes. Although written for Warhammer 2nd edition, Ravening Hordes may be used to determine the size and composition of armies. However, points values will need to be recalculated to bring them in line with this edition. Throughout these rules you may notice references to chaotic or evil creatures. This is a leftover from Dungeons & Dragons, alignments being much more prevalent in RPGs where such things are more nuanced. This would be omitted in later editions of the game in preference simply of armies being entirely good, bad or indifferent in their outlooks. In short, this edition states creatures to be aligned to either law, good, neutral, evil, or chaos. We cover the animosity rules and the complexities of saga animosity, another kooky rule that was quickly deemed unnecessary further down the editions. We also learn of instability, i.e. the effect otherworldly creatures suffer from when forced into the material realm. Chaos attributes. Interestingly, we then cover mutation and its effects upon the grim inhabitants of our evolving world. This strikes me as a curious addition to this edition, in that I suspect there was to be a more dedicated swing towards the entire world being affected by chaos to a larger degree, thus distancing itself from the more historical side of wargaming. This section of the Bestiary covers attributes in the game. Bear in mind, more in-depth rules can be found in Realm of Chaos and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Now you might be aware of my love for the Realm of Chaos. With this in mind, I suspect there may very well be a series akin to this in the making somewhere down the line. So I won't spend too much time delving into this paltry assortment of attributes here. But we are given a nice smattering of different mutations to choose from all the same, Scorpion Tail being my favourite. The contents of the Bestiary. For ease of use, the Bestiary is divided into the following main sections: entries and sub-entries. Whilst the entries are arranged into alphabetical order, the sub-entries have been presented in the most easily assimilated order, so that Chaos Dwarfs come after Dwarfs and Norse Dwarfs, for example. I do like a bit of logic. Intelligent races. This category encompasses creatures likely to appear as bulk troops in armies such as dwarfs, goblins and orcs. It also includes a few creatures which are too rare or unusual to appear in great numbers, but which are intelligent thinking beings comparable to humans such as Coatl and Zoats. That's it then. What follows is expansive descriptions of the races and their attributes, a little of which I will be covering as we go. Beastmen are as twisted in mind as in body. Sadism and the worship of the gods of chaos are their only solace in a world where they are feared and hated. From one isolated group of beastmen evolved the Skaven, creatures combining the physical attributes of man and rat. Other beastmen forms are less stable, giving rise to fresh mutations in every generation, so that their forest hovels harbour an insane mixture of bestial flesh and vestigial humanity. Of note, those humans born along the northern borders of the Empire may invariably be mutated by the forces of darkness. These outcasts are left to the wilds, from where they are adopted by their new brethren, who will raise them as their own. They are, of course, aligned to chaos. Centaurs live upon the northern steppes east of the Old World and north of the Mountains of Morn. They are nomadic and have no permanent settlements, preferring to move through the steppes with the changing seasons and following the herds. In ancient times they were said to be friendly with the elves and to occasionally travel through the Old World. They are a free and uninhibited race, intelligent, reasonable and kindly, an interesting origin for the noble centaurs, who would be warped further by chaos as the editions went on, only remaining as beast and bull centaurs. As of now, though, they are aligned to good. Coatl are intelligent flying reptiles. Think snakes with wings, native to the steaming jungles of Lustria. Despite their rather bestial appearance, they are held sacred by the Slann. Pygmies, who are less sophisticated creatures than the Slann, eat Coatl if they can catch them. And Coatl have some dealings with the Slann, although they are careful to avoid casual contact with humanoid races wherever they can. They are aligned to good. The dwarfs are split into 3 types: Old, Norse and Black or Chaos dwarfs. Although very different in many ways, all 3 types share common features and are represented by the same profile. Dwarfs are a common sight amongst the human settlements. Dwarf traders and artisans are regarded with suspicion in the countryside. However, in the cities and towns they are well respected for their wares. Whatever their current disposition, the dwarfs are united by a common history that is far older than the humans. They are typically aligned to neutral, however some may be evil or even chaotic. This is covered in the following sections on Norse and Chaos dwarfs. Elves are the oldest and wisest of the humanoid races, older even than the dwarfs, whose civilization antedates that of humanity by more than 2,000 years. The elves are tall and lithe, bright-eyed and alert, and, whilst physically indistinguishable, are quite different in temperament and attitudes. Like the dwarfs, they are a sundered race, comprising of groups that call themselves high, sea or wood elves, who are aligned to good, and the dark elves, who are evil or chaotic. The Fimir are strange bog creatures who haunt fens and desolate wastelands throughout the western Old World. Their strongholds take the form of foreboding, craggy piles of rock, crudely built in the semblance of human castles. All Fimir settlements are wreathed in thick mist, a miasma which is magically generated by the Fimir in order to shield them from the sun. Indeed, when forced to travel beyond their swamp homes, they surround themselves in an enchanted mist which moves with them. The Fimir are evil creatures. Gnomes are the smaller relatives of dwarfs, sharing a similar cultural heritage, language and grumpy temperament. As far as anyone knows, gnomes have always lived alongside the dwarfs, although in their own distinct settlements and never mixing with their larger cousins. Much like the halflings who rely on their larger human cousins, the gnomes rely on the might of the dwarfs for their safety. Gnomes are even more isolationist than the dwarfs, although there are odd individuals who reside within the Empire. Vast majority live in communities within the World's Edge Mountains. Gnomes are neutral. Goblins are the most common of the goblinoid races, of which the others are hobgoblins, orcs and snotlings. We also have chaos goblins, which are mutated monsters with all kinds of gribbly nonsense. Goblinoids are related with common physical traits, psychological and social features. All are basically evil, cruel, callous creatures that understand and appreciate only brute force. Although we distinguish between 4 main types of goblins, most Old Worlders casually refer to all types as goblins. Interestingly, Tolkien himself used Uruk, orc, goblin, and the like synonymously throughout his writings. Goblins are naturally evil. Halflings are contented, well-meaning and somewhat indolent folk who are more interested in the welfare of their crops and the contents of their bellies than warfare. Their militia is supposed to help defend the moot against raiding goblins, and is technically part of the Imperial Army, although its value as a fighting force is debatable at best. Their primary claim to military renown, as we learned earlier in the rules, is as baggage guards and cooks. Halflings are neutrally aligned. Half-orcs were left out of later editions for fear of confusing the green skin situation further than necessary. They are renegades who often group together to form mercenary or robber bands, although they may equally be found as slaves to evil masters or even other orcs. The most human amongst them are mostly simply ugly creatures with unhealthy looking skin, long gangle limbs, a stoop, and of course the hallmark of the goblinoids, huge teeth. They are neutral or evil. Hobgoblins are rare and unwelcome visitors to the old world. They are really creatures of the open steppes to the east, and the northern parts of the dark lands. Hobgoblins are nomadic goblinoids, less heavily built than orcs, although almost as tall. They do, however, possess a cunning streak far longer than any goblin, and this is what makes them all the more dangerous. Hobgoblins are evil. Humans are the most numerous and powerful of the races occupying the old world today. Their kingdoms comprise of thriving towns, huge cities, and countless smaller villages. Corruption eats away at the bureaucracies that run the cities, whilst no-gooders are working to undermine humanity's great accomplishments. Human forces keep a close eye on the happenings of the north, and are ever wary of the next chaos incursion. Humans are neutral. The Norse are next and are separate in that they have some additional rules that apply to them. Wares are creatures of human origin, except that they are able to assume the form of a wolf, either wholly or partially. What is of particular note here is that there is so much space dedicated to something I don't ever recall anyone ever filled in. Perhaps this was simply a leftover from Rick's Dungeons and Dragons phase. Wares are neutral. As you might expect of a world doused in warpstone, there are a significant cohort of chaotic humans. We have chaos cultists, chaos warriors, and chaos sorcerers. We then go into evil warriors and evil sorcerers. A distinction between chaos and evil here being a slight difference in the access to chaos armor. Note, chaos armor does not inhibit the casting of spells like other armor. Far more in-depth information of everything covered in brief here can be found in the Realm of Chaos books. The lizard men are a race of humanoid reptiles related to troglodytes, with this distinction going the way of the dodo in later editions, and the omission of troglodytes altogether. In this early edition, the lizard men live in the deep dark caves under the delvings of the dwarfs and goblins. It is worth mentioning here that the lizard men were hounded by the Slann as an inferior race, and it isn't until much later, with the introduction of the lizard men as a dedicated army in 5th edition, that they were placed within the realm of Lustria. The lizard men are neutral. Orcs are the bravest, fiercest and most dangerous of all the goblinoid races commonly encountered in the wilds of the Old World. Their main strongholds lie in the Dark Lands and the surrounding mountains, from where they descend upon the human kingdoms to raid, destroy and pillage. They are terribly resilient and will make their homes anywhere within the Old World if permitted. As such, the human realms persecute them wherever they roam. Orcs are for the most part evil. Pygmies are the smallest of the human races, with some Old World scholars denying they are human at all. They come from the dense jungles of Lustria, where they live in small tribal groups. Nominally they are subjects of the Slann Emperor, although their relations with the Slann are not always good. Pygmies are neutral. Skaven are a race of chaos beastmen, combining the physique and mental outlook of man with the low cunning and problem-solving skills of lowly rats. They owe their warped nature to the power of warpstone, one of the greatest sources of magic in the world. They reside in the Underdark, a series of tunnels that extend for many leagues under the great cities of the Empire and beyond. It is from here that they roam out in the night to plague the human dwellers above their heads. Ratmen are chaotic. The Slann are an ancient race whose past and origin stretches beyond the horizons of this world. Once they roamed the stuff of chaos in great fleets spanning the cosmos, and today the long isolated remnants of those Slann who settled on the Warhammer world live in Lustria, the vast southern continent far to the southwest of the old world. The Slann are considered neutral. Snotlings are the smallest and most debased of the goblinoids. Indeed, it is interesting that they should have their own section external to goblins, but they have their own special rules, so I guess it makes sense. Also, having witnessed a Snotling army descend upon a hapless halfling village at Bring Out Your Lead, I can understand their inclusion. Despite being goblinoids, Snotlings are not malicious, instead being cheeky rapscallions, and are thus neutral. Finally, for the intelligent races, we have the noble Zoat, sometimes called Zote, but I don't like that as it sounds like some sort of weird ailment. Anyway, Zoats are semi-legendary creatures who are rarely seen in the old world. Everything about them is mysterious. No one professes to know how they came into the world, nor what they are doing upon it. It is rumoured that they have occasional dealings with the Wood Elves. Zoats are neutral. Giant races. Next up are the Giants. Giants are rare in most of the old world, and only remotely common in the northern areas towards Norsca. In Cathay and the east they are marginally less scarce, but nowhere are giants an everyday sight. They are large, burly creatures, but are often rather dim-witted. Most live solitary lives, occasionally banding together with others of their kind to assault travellers, or to hold one of their legendary drinking bouts. Giants can be of any alignment. Minotaurs are creatures of chaos, who came into being as a result of the widespread mutation that followed the collapse of the Slann spatial gateways. Minotaurs are a form of giant beastmen, sharing many unpleasant traits with their smaller cousins. Like Skaven, they have achieved a degree of genetic stability, so that mutations tend to follow a common pattern. Minotaurs are chaotic. Ogres are believed to be distant relatives of humans, with some scholars positing that the race was the last great attempt by the Slann at creating a master race. Being far larger than humans, they certainly fit the bill physically. However, this is where their superiority over humans falters. They are dim and coarse, preferring fighting over any kind of academic study. They have been known to resort to cannibalism when the need arises, although saying that, they are not necessarily evil creatures, and as such are neutral. Tree men are large humanoids, well as humanoid as a tree with limbs can be called as such. This treatise claims they may be related to trolls, but I find this notion purely fantastical. Whilst they may share some traits such as damage resistance, longevity and a fear of fire, this does not mean they are related in any way. Tree men inhabit the dense forests of the old world and mix only with the wood elves, who they find amusing, to say the least. Tree men are good, for the most part. Troglodytes are the larger relatives of lizard men. They have long, brawny limbs covered in tough scales, which they complement with salvaged armour and shields. Capable of wielding a variety of weaponry, this species would meet its untimely end with the release of the Lizard Men Army book some years later, with them brutally omitted. It can be suggested that they form the basis for the Kroxigor models, in a fashion, them being larger and tougher than their smaller kin. Trogs are neutral. trolls are foul creatures that inhabit the northern wastes beyond the Linsk River, although they are occasionally seen in the forests of the Empire. They roam south, pushing further as the strength of chaos waxes, then retreat as the powers of darkness wane. Greatly feared by travellers and warriors alike for their formidable strength, durability, and ability to regenerate from grievous wounds. Truly these are chaotic creatures indeed. Trolls may be evil or chaotic in nature. Creatures. This section includes everything you need to know about the basic creatures of the world. There is nothing particularly groundbreaking or new here, so I will simply list them, noting any anomalies, and we can move on at a rate of knots, akin to a goblin skiff cutting across the waves off the Tylean coast. We have bears, boars, cold ones, yes, the large lizards ridden by dark elves and lizard men alike, cold one warhounds, which I don't remember models for, direwolves, dragons, eagles, giant bats, frogs, leeches, rats, snails, spiders, and wolves. Next we have the improbable hobhounds, notably different from chaos hounds in that they are used by hobgoblins, although I don't think the distinction needed to be made. Anyway, on to horses, mammoths, swarms, warhorses, and warhounds. Creatures of chaos. The northern fringes of the world are continually shifting as the collapsed warp gates pulse in and out like a great black heartbeat. Within this realm of chaos there is neither solid matter nor coherent energy, only a tangible darkness within which the shifting winds of change blow a dense tangle of atoms and primal intelligence. So, what are these nefarious creatures of chaos? We have chaos hounds, chaos steeds, the evil chimera, made up of many different beasts, the cockatrice, gorgons, griffins, harpies, and hippogriffs, who are similar to griffins but with some trace of horse, such as the rear legs, and whilst the rules here state they are chaotic, but may be reared as evil or neutral, I believe this has been retconned in the newer rules with gents riding these handsome beasts. Anyways, we go on to hydras, and my favourite beastie, the jabberwock, and manticores and wyverns. Undead. The undead are an accepted reality in the Warhammer world. Not mere creatures of legend, even so, most people would hope not to encounter an undead creature, preferring to restrict their knowledge of such things to fireside tales and fanciful drinking stories. The undead include such horrors as carrion, ghouls, liches, mummies, skeletons, undead heroes, undead horsemen, vampires, and zombies. It's worth noting that these were the good old days when you could have mummies and vampires in the same army lists, long before the days of the sundering of this once great army into tomb kings and vampire princes. Ethereal creatures. Appropriately, as we have just finished briefly talking about the undead, we have ethereal creatures up next. These incorporeal spirits cannot be harmed except by magic weapons, attacks by demons, elementals and other elemental beings. They are only affected by some magic, namely necromancy. In this section we detail ghosts, spectres, wights, noting they have yet to assume their heavily armoured warriors of old moniker, and wraiths. Demons. The demons are material manifestations of entities of power in the realm of chaos, their physical shapes being similar in style to their patron gods. A demon's body may be slain, however it is not destroyed, and instead returned to whence it came, and thus banished back to the void, for a time at least. Demons may be controlled by a powerful summoner, although they are just as likely to be moulded by the irrational fears of innocent creatures, the thoughts of particularly powerful individuals, and even the gods themselves. We cover greater demons, lesser demons, demonic servants, and demonic familiars. It's worth bearing in mind that we are skimming over the wave tops here, and far more information is held in the Realm of Chaos books, The Lost and the Damned, and slaves to darkness. Elementals. The elementals are spirits of nature, forces inherent in the four elements of air, earth, fire and water. Naturally, you might expect such creatures in Dungeons and Dragons, and you would be right, for what fantasy world is complete without the four base elements, at least? Each of the four elemental types has powers unique to itself. However, all elementals conform to the common rules given here. We end this section with a little on each of the four types of elementals, as mentioned above. So, that's it for today. From the chaos wastes to the dark swamps we've journeyed, encountering bizarre and tremendous beasts. We've done it all, we've seen it all, there's nothing left to do and nothing left to see. I hope you have enjoyed this video as much as I did researching and rereading my battered old copy of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Anyways, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.